Welcome to High Notes, conversations on the art and business of voice. High Notes. Make sure you never miss a video on our channel by pressing that subscribe button, and if you like this episode, please do give it a like and leave us a comment below. Now, let's meet this month's guest. In this episode, we sit down with Tom Keegan, an acclaimed director behind some of the world's biggest AAA video games, including Jedi, Fallen Order, and Wolfenstein. Tom shares his journey from a creatively rich childhood to becoming one of the leading voices in video game performance direction. Whether you're an aspiring actor, an up-and-coming director, or simply curious about the craft behind your favourite games, this is a really thoughtful and in-depth conversation about storytelling, creativity, and the human side of game development. Hi, Tom. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, Melissa. Thanks for having me.
So I do like to start at the beginning. I want to know, was there anything particularly creative about your childhood or your younger days that you feel might have influenced your career today?
Really good question. It's positive and negative for me. I did have a very creative childhood. In fact, my father was an amateur actor and really should have been an actor, but he was an actor and singer, amateur. And I always say that I kind of make this joke. I was born in a trunk, which it means like from vaudeville days, right? You were born on the stage. It's not exactly true. I used to call my favorite days school play days because those were the days I couldn't wait to get up in the morning, wait till my feet hit the floor, and I was often running. And despite my parents' best efforts to keep me from going into the profession, it sort of forced me to fight my way, for it. And, it's been a long climb. I was in theater and dance, movement for a long time, always voice, always I had a deep voice. And I went to drama school, the whole 9 yards. I'm definitely doing the thing I was born to do, no question.
I was just about to say exactly the same thing. Certainly runs in your blood.
Yes.
You've directed performances for some of the biggest AAA games out there. What do you think is the key difference between voice acting for games and other types of VO like commercial or animation?
Voice acting for games requires much more of a range. Right. I mean, the number one thing, of course, is the barks and efforts, right? The deaths, the screams, in-game audio, the stuff that you're doing during gameplay is actually most of the VO in a game. However, not only do you have to have the range and the ability, but you also have to have a really good sense of acting for the cinematics and for the scenes and be able to play characters in a very kind of realistic yet slightly heightened way. It's finding that sweet spot of sort of naturalism pushed really to an extreme in many cases.
For me, video game work is the hardest of all three of those genres, without a shadow of a doubt. So it's interesting to hear your take on it. I was lucky enough to read an excerpt from your forthcoming book, The Complete Guide to Video Game Performance Directing, Place, Time, Action. I loved it. I think you're a beautiful writer. I thought you had an incredible way of making something that I remember from drama school seem almost like I couldn't grab it. And I was reading these chapters and I thought, you just make it sound really simple. And that is no easy feat. So I really enjoyed the chapters that I read. So thank you.
Yeah, that's great.
Thank you for that.
Good.
What inspired you to write this new book? And what do you hope both directors and actors will take away from it?
It's funny because I have a business coach who for years has been saying you should write a book, right? And I've been pushing back and going, come on, nobody reads books anymore. And it was during the pandemic, I suddenly felt like, oh, it's right. Now it's right. Now's the time. And I think of it as it's like a cookbook in a way. If you really know how to cook, you use a cookbook to sort of touch base with the amounts of things or what you need to learn or what you need to just touch base with. And I wanted to capture a period of knowledge that I had during a seminal time, which was the beginning of this industry. And I was just fortunate enough to fall into it at the beginning. And then one of the things I say in my book for directors is that you get an incredible amount of time in this profession with actors. If you're directing on TV or movie or even theater, maybe you work once every other year, once or twice a year on TV, right? Whatever. You don't get that much face time with actors, whereas in video games, you're with actors every day. And was working out a certain set of principles. And I will say, and I do credit in my book my teacher, Judith Weston, one of the really main influences in my life. And I think in the career of directing in films as well. She trained some of the really like the top directors today. And I was fortunate enough to work with her for like a good 10, 15 years. And so I had an opportunity to really work out all those principles. Her work brought all the things I had studied, all that acting, because I was an actor originally, to bring it all together. And so I've written a book because there isn't a book like this anywhere on the market of seeing acting from the roots of Stanislavski through the lens of video games. And that's what I'm teaching now as well, just to kind of pass on everything that I've learned and worked on to the next generation. Video games is such a young industry, and there's so many people directing in it that they just kind of fell into it, and they don't have any formal training in drama. So this is kind of a compendium of things if you didn't go to drama school, if you never studied theater. This draws a little like line for you, and just kind of gets down the basic principles of acting and directing that go into creating a subtext.
Yeah, I mean, it felt to me like it was a real labor of love. I thought you were very gracious with how you articulated everything. And I thought I started reading, I thought, great, this is going to be deep compared to other books that I have read on acting for video games. I thought, yes, I'm going to get my blanket, I'm going to get my cup of tea, and I'm going to settle in for a good few hours. And I felt like I wanted to roll around everything I felt like I wanted to take my time with it. That it wasn't the kind of book that you just rush through. It was the kind of book that you talk about subtext, and I love the way you defined that, the words and the life underneath the words. Is that how you defined it?
Yeah. One of the big things that I try to convey to my students, and is so hard to break, is this idea of illustrating the words. And let's say, for example, like illustrating the words, and actors just fall into it. It's just natural, and they go, oh, isn't it a lovely day? And they look up and they smile. And we don't talk that way. That's not life. We say, oh, nice day out. Oh, or in California, right? Oh, another beautiful day. And the subtext conveys so words, I say weaponized in a way. They're weaponized in the moment the interesting thing in a performance is the tension between the words and what's happening, and the feeling of the person and the reason they're speaking right now.
Yeah. I love the examples that you used. There was one that particularly resonated with me when you were talking about, I think maybe a member of your family had passed away and the tension was broken with the ice cream.
It's about grief, right? And it's the cliche illustration of grief and sadness is turn down mouth and down, whatever, down expression. But if we look at our true response to grief in life, it's so different. There was just a friend posted a thing the other day, and I just felt it captured it perfectly. It was her father had just passed away, and she took this picture of her mother saying goodbye, stroking her father's face, literally at the moment of his death. And she goes, there's nothing like taking a moving picture of your mother saying goodbye to her father at his moment of death to realize she's holding a burrito. It's like, that's life.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's life.
Yeah.
Yes.
In the book, you talk about understanding place, time, and action in a scene. How does getting these right, do you think, unlock stronger performances from voice actors?
Well, the big struggle that voice actors and developers have is getting context into the material, right? So voice actors get auditions, and it contains very little information about what's going on, right? And so that's where people then tend to just kind of illustrate the words. But I say PTA, place, time, action. Where are we? What's the physical environment? Why now? What happened? Now, we don't always know, right? We don't always have that information, but we can make an idea that gives us something specific, and we can kind of extrapolate, why would this person be saying this? What's hidden in the text? And then the third thing is action, right? Why are they saying this now? Or what effect do they want to have on another character? And just answering those three things, I think, gives an actor a way in. Same thing for a developer. Can they simply put that information somewhere in either the spreadsheet or the audition sides, to just very simply convey what happened, what, even in an audition, right? It might say a spaceship just after an attack by aliens, right? Picking up the pieces, right? There is a place, time, and an action, right? Checking to see that everyone's okay. What happened? Why? Someone's talking with their ex-boss, right? That tells you what previously happened, right? It's not that hard, but most developers are really rushing to get the thousands and thousands of lines and pull together some sides for auditions. And there's all kinds of security issues, around releasing information, right? So, but you can always substitute, right? You can always, but I always am begging, give actors something, and actors make something up. Think of a way in, find a way in. And I think that just gives you a way in.
Really useful advice. What's the most common mistake you see even experienced actors make when they step into the performance capture volume or VO booth for a game? Is there something that just you see repeated again and again that you could advise actors to maybe have a think about?
Well, I think the main thing that I see actors doing is locking down on an idea of how they're going to play something. And that, to me, that falls under illustrating, right? And here I cough, and here and here's where I go up a little bit, and here's where I get angry, right? But the fact is, you need to hold it very, very loosely. Same thing in auditions. I find that actors come in and, just what I was saying about security, most of the time, the sides are heavily disguised, right? And this is my number one pet peeve. I have an actor come in for a performance capture audition, and I say, let me tell you what really the circumstances are here. And I tell them something, it's the same emotional stakes, but slightly different circumstances. And they go, oh, that's not what I was thinking. Could I just show you what I practiced? And I'm like, no. And sometimes I've had things. One time we cast this one actor, and he was wonderful. And he was a Southern Gothic writer in World War I. In between the time he got cast, he was the lead in the scene, and when we went to do the shoot, was entirely rewritten. And on the set, he whispers to me and he goes, am I still a Southern Gothic writer? I'm like, no, just be yourself right now. We'll figure this out later. And it was like, you don't know. It may have changed. So I would say, don't lock in. I call it a basket of choices, right? So I say, bring your basket of choices. Always try the opposite, consider the opposite, and then come in open and see and play. That's the only way I think to approach this game is as if it's a game, and you bring your tools, and then you see, what are we going to build today?
Yeah, I think that you hear the phrase permission to play so much. We talk about it so much here. And what's really interesting when we first start working with some talent is this inability to just loosen up, right? And really understand what play means, that there is no right answer. And so when we're training in characters, that's our work with the actors, is to say, we're going to show you how to play and how to loosen up. And often it's all about the cold read, right? Often it's in the training and the learning that you do outside of the job where you perfect your craft, not necessarily on the job. Does that sort of resonate with you?
Yeah, I always say you need to play, you need to take risks, but that's again where you have to know PTA because, yes, go all the way in your room during your preparation, try crazy things. However, you have to come back to place time action. Then, is that going to fit into the facts of the scene or the circumstances in some way, right? I've made mistakes. I've made terrible mistakes by getting a crazy idea and then pursuing it because I think it's a wonderful idea and I see it in the game later and it's, oh God, that didn't fit. No, what was I thinking? You have to go back and weigh it against what will work. And that's where a good director comes in, right? And so a director needs to create an atmosphere where people can play and take chances, but they also can trust that the director is going to bring it back, is going to help channel that play into serving the needs of the text or really the developers. A video game is tons of people. It's not just one vision, right? And people really, you need to play, but you also need to listen and channel that play into serving the needs of the team in a way.
So keeping it on point. In much of your work, like Jedi, Fallen Order, and Wolfenstein, the performances are often subtle and natural. I've heard you talk about that. What helps actors tap into the emotional truth of a scene when the world around them is entirely imagined?
Well, I would say then you need to find yourself in it first, right? So, for example, I have this thing in the book. And in Wolfenstein 2, the creative director really wanted me to be in it. And I was just like, okay, well, yeah, give me a walk on. No. He wanted me to play like the character where you do the final boss fight. And so I played this talk show host, right? And so the talk show host, his name was Jimmy Carver, and he has the evil General Frau Engel, and he's playing like this Johnny Carson character, and he's laughing and kind of kissing her ass in a way. And then in between, when they're not on camera, she's like threatening him, right? His life is at stake. And so I thought, okay, how am I going to tap into this? So I did a lot of improv with myself, and I thought, well, who is someone, if I was interviewing them, that I would be, truly admire, but at the same time would be afraid of ruffling their feathers. And all I could think about was Barbra Streisand. And if you have a fussy diva and, you really love them and you want to compliment them, but at the same time, you don't want to go too far, or you might go too far, what's going to keep you walking on eggshells, right? And so you have to find that yourself. I always say, find yourself in it first, then add the accent, or then add the circumstances. It's what Meisner said, right? Finding the truth, being yourself under imaginary circumstances, right? And so I always think if you find the self first and then you start adding on the circumstances, you always have that kernel of you at the center of it.
Our head of characters, Elaine, always says it's about truthful performances in a heightened reality world, which always kind of sticks with me, right?
And video games are the most heightened reality.
Yeah, yeah. Do you encourage voice actors to build physicality into their performance? And how does that impact the end result? Because we talk about physicality an awful lot here.
Yes, but it's different, right? Because voice acting is incredibly physical. That's the thing, is you need stamina. You need you need to have technique. You cannot create voice without the body, right? And also in many circumstances now, you're doing face. You may be doing face. For example, I just did a game where it was branching dialogue and we did face. And so the people came to the booth, they had dots applied to their face. They're looking at a camera, and for every line, they had to start from a neutral face, save the line with full expression in their face, and then go back to that neutral face, doing it as I say it, right, at the end of the line. And It's no good if they start too soon, if they're not in the neutral face when they begin, their lips were open, they're supposed to be closed, whatever they establish as their neutral face, right? So that adds another layer of complexity. Um, Voice acting, of course, also requires the ability for you to not rustle or make any sound, so yes, you need physicality. It might help you, but also then you might have to be able to inhibit it a little bit.
Yeah, it's knowing how to perform on a microphone, isn't it? That's the key. There are different movements, different ways of reaching the emotions or whatever it is you're trying to portray that you would not adopt on a stage or on TV.
Absolutely. Also, the breathing is very different. For example, we both studied with Patsy Rodenberg, right? Now, Patsy really teaches stage breathing, right? Where you're really getting the breath in deep, you're sending that thin stream of air out. But in front of a microphone, you can't be sending a thin stream of air. So I just think of it as a stream of vocal waves, maybe, or of sound waves. Resound, right? Let the sound waves come out, but in a certain way, you have to use kind of minimal breath coming out towards the mic, right? So it's really knowing how to use your technique. Now, on the other hand, if you're working in performance capture, it is still voice acting. It's still voice acting. And I've seen voice actors, famous voice actors, fail horribly in a performance capture audition because it's like when they're acting in their body, they can't make that sound. They're just not used to it. They're kind of, I'm here rather than whatever beautiful sound they normally work with behind the mic. And behind the mic, right, they might kind of hunch, or they might kind of move their body in a way to keep their mouth in the same position.
It's
right.
so many disparate things coming together, isn't it, to make it work?
It really is. Yes.
You're taking me right back there. Games today are incredibly sophisticated in terms of story and emotion. You've been around for a very long time, in a good way. How has the role of voice performance evolved since you started working in the late 90s?
It's definitely more naturalistic, number one. So that's wonderful in certain ways. There's a lot more respect for the instrument of the voice actor. You really cannot ask an actor to do 4 hours of shouts. There's really been a lot more pressure and pushback to make sure the actor's voice is kept healthy, that there's more authenticity in casting. We really look for people who have the accent, a native accent. They're the ethnicity or race that is called for. You don't have a white actor doing a black voice, hopefully. It's gotten better in that way, for sure.
Yeah. Many Brava clients are already working in or focused on getting into video games. I'm sure you've had these questions a million times. What qualities do you look for when casting voice actors for a game project? Because these are the questions we get all the time.
I think we're looking for a voice that is clear, has different tones in it, good articulation, but not overly good. They can, and that when you hear the voice, you feel the character. Does that make sense? You feel that there's something about a well-placed and trained voice that is easy to listen to, pleasant and clear. I recently was working with an actor who very talented, but more coming from the stunt end, and he did some voice work with this actor in the booth, and it was good, but then the role that they were doing ended up becoming like a major role. And we started listening. They were like, the team was like, well, is this actor really right for this role? And it was just like, there was something about the voice wasn't commanding enough in terms of its depth. Even though wonderful actor, its depth, its power, the flexibility of it. This character had to be a simple, vulnerable person on the surface and evil. They take an evil turn, right? But what is good? What is evil? There has to be nuance in that as well.
It reminds me of the casting director I once met who always used to say, "There's no bad acting, only bad casting." I'm sure you've heard that a million times.
I haven't heard that, but I think that could be true.
I
I
therefore
think there's
pass
bad
it on
acting.
to you. Yeah,
Yeah.
I pass it on to you.
Thank you.
We talked a little bit about subtext because you talk about that an awful lot in your book, and it's a fascinating read. When you're working with actors on game scripts, how do you help them find the subtext, especially when the writing can sometimes be technical or fragmented?
Well, I think that's where the PTA comes in, the place-time action, because as soon as you, like, even just place, even taking on the simplest place, if the voice does not sound realistically like someone in that environment, it's out. Now, there's a caveat to that, which is we know from movies also, if you're on a helicopter, you can take that to an extreme. Like, people are shouting on the helicopter, except there is a way of mixing it where it doesn't sound like that. It becomes really annoying. But if it's just too rich and flat and neutral, and I've heard that a million times because people recorded something in the booth and did not, it's neutral. They obviously didn't know what the situation was, right? And they're doing a nice round recording. Hi, how are you? But there was just an emergency. You get it in the game, and there was just an emergency, an explosion or something, and it comes on like, let's go. It's just doesn't fit, right? So I think the subtext is also the director needs to help the actor with that. They really do. And that's the director or the developer's jobs, who's ever doing the directing, is they need to give the actor the facts and the circumstances and encourage them to, be flexible. Like, for example, if it says coughs at a certain place or with breath, it's like, well, maybe it doesn't have to be at that exact moment in the parenthetical, right? Give the actor permission to, if they have to cough, give them permission to cough where it's organic.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so interesting listening to you, having done so many auditions, of course, on the other side of things. Is there one piece of direction you've given in the booth that you can remember that instantly unlocked a great performance? One of those wow moments where you just thought something happened there.
Yes, I think I'm thinking of a particular thing where the characters on objective, their action was to get redemption from another character for having wronged them. And a wonderful actor filled with emotion, just like she's crying, authentic emotion. She can barely get it out. And I just said, you're the one apologizing and you're the one asking for forgiveness, but you have all the emotion. And that doesn't leave the other character room to breathe. So hold that back, inhibit that emotion, let them have the emotion. Okay? Imagine looking at that other person and seeing their face as you say these words, evoking forgiveness in them. And don't make it about you. Instant change.
Yeah, we talk about nerves a lot here, and we always say if you walk into any job or audition and are worried about yourself and you want someone to tell you how great you are or how good you are, then that's not the right intent. It's about wanting to work and bounce off someone else, even if they're not in front of you. And it sounds very similar to that, I think, for me.
Yeah, it's that whole thing of put the focus on the other character, even if it's just imaginary. It gets it off you portraying or illustrating something. But if you're nervous and anxious, I used to go through that as an actor. I was callback king and I would blow it because I would be so nervous I couldn't hear. So that's where you need to really work with yourself, um, neurologically to get yourself in a place where you're breathing, you can hear, you've calmed your nervous system down through breath, through meditation, whatever it is that it takes. You have to be able um, to get yourself in that, but you can't pretend that you're not having those feelings. So in some way, you have to work with that. You have to be able to either turn it into excitement, but you're so right. I talk about this in the book, this experience with the actor David Harewood, um, who came in to audition a long time ago. And he came in and he was so easy. And he said, "Hey, how are you? Let's talk about this material. What do you want to do with it? Let's try some things." I was like, "Oh my God, I want to work with this actor."
Yeah, he's
You know,
amazing. He's amazing, isn't he?
so good,
Yeah.
so good, and just in the right spirit.
Yeah, he's great. You talk a lot in your book about self-care for directors. How important is it for actors too, especially given the emotional and physical demands of performance capture and voice work and things like isolation and a need for community? What kinds of things would you recommend for directors and actors to take on board?
Well, I think that you have to remember that your creativity and your spirit is what brings value to your work. And that's what you have to take care of and make sure you have energy and make sure you feel inspired. And, also that you you're recreating in ways that are not directly related, but that keep you in touch with life. You're around children, you travel, you have pets, you go to art, dance, music, things. Sometimes I'm just like, watch a performance today. I can't watch television. It's not relaxing to me. So I'd rather watch dance or listen to music or go to a museum, um, or read, you know, replenish. I call it the replenishment chain. You need to be able to replenish and also to know that you have worth outside of this, right? As a person. It's very hard, and actors just have all of my love and respect because it's such a challenging life. But I grew up that way too. I was an actor, and it was like I used to have this teacher who said, to be an actor, you have to want to do it more than anything else. And I didn't understand that, because there were days when it was like, "Oh, I don't feel like it today." But it's over the long term, and you either have it or you don't. You know what I mean? It's like, as when I was an actor, it was like I didn't care about money. I didn't care about anything except the opportunity to act and to enter this world where I'm channeling a character, when I'm interacting with people in this deep emotional way with others. It's wonderful. It's so wonderful. I love it. I love actors.
Yeah, me too. I think I pick up on something you said there, which is with others. And I think something we always say is, yes, we want to get paid for all this, but if the chips are down and times are tough, then create anyway and still be curious and create and produce with others for its own sake and for your own sake where you can. I know actors have to eat, but if you can create something or even go and see a show with somebody or just have that community, I think is important. So yeah, those are the things we recommend, and so lovely to hear you talk through those. Thank you. Now, you mentioned the many wonderful coaches you've worked with. We talked about Patsy Rodenberg earlier on, and Judith Weston I've heard of many, many times. How important is coaching for you? Do you still do it for yourself now? And what are some of the highlights you've experienced in your training?
Absolutely. I do coaching. I still continue to coach. My teacher, Judith, is not teaching classes any longer. So in the last few years, I've been working on voice. I started studying Estel. I got my Rodenberg teaching certificate. So that has been enormously helpful. I think you have to train throughout your life. It gives us an opportunity when we train to do other material than what we're doing commercially. even when you're working as an actor, you're limited by the marketplace in some way. And training, even being in a group with others is, a workout group, a VO workout group is super helpful. But it's kind of like therapy. You need information outside of what your own mind can grasp. You need new information for your blind spots.
Yeah, and to grow and to be challenged. And I mean, I say to everyone we work with here at Brava, I still coach as well all over the world with people I find interesting and fascinating. And no coach would ever turn up and say, we know it all. And you can't be stuck in one place. The minute you stop growing and being curious, to me, is the minute we're stuck. So it's great to hear that you are still coaching after all these years.
You have to stay fresh. Absolutely.
So if someone's dream is to be part of a storytelling project like Star Wars or Indiana Jones, and I know it's many Brava talents' dream to feature in one of those titles, what skills would you recommend they should be honing today?
Well, I mean, handling a lightsaber.
And you're not joking either.
I am not joking.
I know you're not.
I mean, when I was auditioning for Star Wars, I had a $5 plastic lightsaber or a wooden dowel, a broomstick, and I would ask people to do an improv. It's really hard to say I want to be in that kind of a game. I think it's kind of luck. I think the thing, though, is to approach everything as if it were your dream franchise. That's the thing. Long ago, I made a decision with myself as a director that because so much of video game material is mission briefing, right? Go over here, do this. We have to go get that. We have to get 5 golden goblets. That I would never rest until I had something to put underneath this mission briefing. Some reason, some profoundly simple human thing that's not boring, but that's interesting, that when they say these words, there's a purpose behind it. I think actors need to find the same thing too. How do you look at Star Wars or Indiana Jones, it's what simple human truth is behind these stories? What decisions did they make that you're going to tell some profound story through this medium, right?
Tom, that sounds like the absolute perfect place because we have to end it today for our lovely chat. I would recommend to everyone listening, please, Tom's book is out in July, is that right?
Yes, in July. Mm-hmm.
It's called The Complete Guide to Video Game Performance Directing, Place, Time, Action. Memorize those words. Please, please read it. It's a fantastic read of the small amount I've read of it. Perhaps one day you'll come over to Bristol and work with us here, Tom.
Oh, I would love that. Yeah, I would love that. Also, if people can see my website, tomkeegan.net, and on Instagram, it's Tom K Studios. That's where I announce the classes that I teach and more information about projects I'm working on. I always welcome people to look me up and just stay in my world.
Definitely. We'll share all of those links on the podcast page as well. And hopefully we'll get to work together with you here at Brava. But Tom, it's been fascinating. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much. Great questions.
You've been listening to High Notes, a podcast on the art and business of voice.